The color wheel can come across as a little bit boring when you look at it. It's very basic and straightforward. However, when you think about how much color and color harmony is involved in making a painting, it becomes extremely important. So we're going to start here with the outer ring. So we're focusing today primarily on the outer ring and getting that complete. For some of these, you might want to give them a second coat of paint. You're going to find that the acrylic paint can be transparent, especially with certain colors. So you see I'm starting here with the yellow, and I'm dedicating one brush to the warms, so yellows, and then I'll have another brush that's dedicated to red, and finally a brush that's dedicated to blue. Now, right from the get-go, I want you to practice holding your brush the right way. So to me, that means holding your brush farther back. And the reason why this is so important is because you want to be able to have some movement and flexibility with your arm. You don't want to just be sitting, staring really close at your painting and doing these little what are called dog paddle strokes. You want to be kind of standing far back, and to do that you need to hold the brush far back. That's why we're using these long handled brushes. That's what the professionals use. They don't use these short brushes. That's reserved for crafts, and that's fine too. But when you're painting and you're doing a fine art piece, you're using these long brushes and holding your hand towards the back of the brush. So we're going to be starting out with the primaries first. So there's the yellow and blue and red. While I'm working on one color, my other brushes are sitting on that tray on the easel, so they're just sitting there. You might want to have a cup of water if you don't use a brush for a while, and stick it in a cup of water while you're waiting, because you don't want the acrylic to dry too fast, and then you're going to have a crusty brush, which you want to avoid. I should mention that those three circles on the top of your color wheel, you can't see them here, but those three circles are supposed to be for the primary colors as well. So you understand that those are the parent colors, mama and papa colors, yellow, red, blue. No mixing required. I'm moving back to my original spot up near the yellow, and I'm doing yellow-orange. So it's really important that you take the brush that has yellow on it and you're adding a drop, just a very minuscule drop of red to that yellow. You're going to discover that some colors have a lot of influence, and red's one of them. It's a really powerful color. You just need a little bit of red to influence another color. And when you're doing the yellow-orange, you want to think like the color of an egg yolk. So kind of yellow gold in color. It's important that you get that color correct. So a lot of these colors that we're doing, it's just has to do with a ratio of one color to the next, and it's important that you get that ratio or recipe correct. So for the orange, that has a little bit more red in it, but be careful because we're going to be creating a red-orange. You can use a piece of scrap paper, or you can use the blank areas around the color wheel to test out a color. I also will do a little paint stroke on the tape because we're taping these down to a board. You could do a little bit of a test strip on there and to check how orange is it. Do you need to add more yellow or more red to it? So the difficulty is with red-orange, you don't want it to look too much like red or too much like the orange. You want to make it its own thing. Red-orange is a really awesome color. When you add white to it, it turns into coral. I didn't want to take up too much of your time showing you each individual one, so I'm showing it to you now after I've finished it, that there's like the red violet there, the violet, the blue violet, the blue green, the green, the yellow green. On that yellow green, it's just like with the yellow orange, really important that you use a lot of yellow and just a tiny influence of blue. Now I did put out a couple types of yellow, a couple types of blue, and a couple types of red. Certain blues, like the phthalo blue, it starts with a P. That phthalo blue is really good on greens. I'd say the ultra blue is good on the violets, but the phthalo blue is also interesting. You're going to start to make your own formulas or color recipes. And I have mine all memorized in my head, but I'm not also opposed to making some up on the fly for sure. So this is something that it takes time and experience, and the more you do it, the more confident you're going to get in your color mixing skills. But I use a palette knife. I wanted to show you a little bit what I'm doing on the palette because I've been showing you how it looks up on the actual color wheel, but this is what my palette looks like. I'm taking a palette knife and I am mixing off camera. This is how I'm making the first part of my tint, which is that middle ring there. It's yellow plus black. And the cool thing about yellow and black is black has a lot of blue in it. You can actually make your own black, by the way. So when you add yellow and a little tiny drop of black to that yellow, it turns green, like army green. It's not the prettiest green, but it's interesting. I went ahead and started working some more off camera. So you're basically taking that same color, if it's red and black. I used abbreviations in those two inner rings, so the middle ring and the last inner one. So if you see an R, it stands for red. If you see RV, it stands for red violet. So a shade is a color plus black, so that's what we're doing here first, is we're going to be doing the color plus black. And I do recommend you rinse your brushes in between. So I go to the sink a couple of times where I have a little bucket of water or a cup of water, and then I also have a paper towel handy. But again, you do want to only use 2 paper towels if you can manage that. So it's really a huge transition when you see the color plus black. It should look different. What I want you to avoid is adding too much black. Black is another one of those hues that can take over another color very easily. So you want to just add a little drop of black to whatever it is. And this is all kind of thin for the time being. If you have extra time, I encourage you to put a second coat of paint on there. Now we're moving on to the final inner ring of the color wheel. And that inner ring has to do with tints. So you're taking a hue and you're adding white to it. And this ring is going to work quite a bit differently than that middle ring because you're going to be adding a ton of whites and a little bit of color. So you actually might want to separate a little puddle of white to it, and then you add just a drop of the color. So for instance, on the orange plus whites, you want to add just a little drop of orange to kind of a lot of white to get it to turn into that peach color. Now you can see all these colors tend to look like pastel colors, right? There's like lavender, and there's you're seeing the coral and the mint green and the baby blues. That's what you want to see. So you want to make it quite dramatic.